My name is Melanie, and I learned early that love in my family wasn't shared equally. My sister Tracy was the star always praised, always handed the best of everything. Me, I was the afterthought remembered only for chores or to make Tracy look better. I got used to it, hand-me-down clothes, forgotten birthdays. My parents' eyes lighting up for her, but never for me. They gave Tracy a house when she graduated, a shiny new place to start her life. My gift, a $5 lottery ticket tossed my way like a joke. But that lottery ticket changed everything. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, in a house that looked perfect from the outside: white siding, a neatly trimmed lawn, a porch swing that creaked in the summer breeze. But inside it was clear I didn't belong the way my sister Tracy did. Tracy was 4 years older, with a smile that could charm anyone and a knack for graphic design that my parents Janet and Philip called a gift from above. They poured everything into her: private art lessons, fancy software trips to design workshops in Atlanta. Me, I got the leftovers, the hand-me-downs, the half-hearted nods when I brought home a good report card. I was 7 when I first noticed it. That Christmas, the living room glowed with string lights and the tree was buried under a pile of gifts. Tracy tore into a massive box, squealing when she found a sleek digital drawing tablet, the kind professionals used. My mother clapped, her eyes sparkling, and my father grabbed his camera to capture every second. I sat on the couch, clutching my knees, waiting for my turn. When it came, my mother handed me a small, wrinkled bag from the dollar store. Inside was a used backpack, faded blue with a broken zipper. "It's practical," she said, barely looking at me. "Tracy needs tools for her future." I forced a smile, but my throat burned as I watched Tracy sketch on her tablet, the screen lighting up her face, while I stuffed the backpack under the couch. Birthdays were no better. For Tracy's 13th, my parents rented a banquet hall, hired a DJ, and invited half the neighborhood. She got a custom sketchbook embossed with her name and a set of high-end markers. The cake was 3 tiers chocolate with edible gold flakes. My 9th birthday fell a month later. I got to invite one friend, Bethany, who lived down the street, and we ate store-bought cupcakes at the kitchen table. My gift was a dog-eared paperback novel, the kind you find in thrift store bins. "You like to read, don't you?" my father said, his voice flat. I nodded, but I didn't read that book. I couldn't. It sat on my shelf, a reminder that I was always second best. Bethany was the only one who seemed to notice. She was my best friend even back then, a scrappy kid with messy braids and a laugh that made everything feel lighter. "Your family's weird," she'd say, sneaking me an extra cupcake. Why do they act like Tracy's the only kid? I didn't have an answer, but her words stuck with me like a splinter I couldn't pull out. By high school, the gap widened. Tracy was a star at West Charlotte High, winning art contests and getting her designs printed in the school paper. My parents framed every certificate, hung every sketch on the living room walls. I wasn't bad at school: straight A's in English, a knack for writing stories, but my achievements were invisible. Once I won a short story contest and showed my mother the certificate. She glanced at it, then said, "That's nice, Melanie, but Tracy's portfolio is what colleges care about." I folded the certificate and never showed them anything again. The summer before my senior year, Tracy graduated high school. My parents threw a backyard party complete with string lights, a catered buffet, and a banner that read, "Tracy's Bright Future." They gave her a brand new laptop, top of the line, for her design program at UNC Charlotte. I helped set up the tables, carried trays of food, smiled when relatives asked how I was doing. No one asked about my plans, and I didn't expect them to. That night, I sat on the porch steps watching fireflies blink in the yard and promised myself I'd get out someday. My own graduation came a year later. I'd worked hard, earned a partial scholarship to a local college, but my parents didn't throw a party. No banner, no lights, no gifts. We ate takeout pizza in the dining room, just the 4 of us. Tracy was there, home from college, talking about her latest design project. My mother listened, nodding, while my father scrolled on his phone. I didn't expect much, but I hoped for something, a card, a pat on the back. Instead, my mother slid a plain envelope across the table. A little something, she said, her smile thin. Inside was a $5 lottery ticket, the kind you buy at gas stations. Maybe you'll get lucky, she said like it was a joke. I looked at her, then at my father, who didn't even glance up. Tracy smirked, her eyes flicking to the ticket. I tucked it into my pocket, my chest tight, and nodded. They didn't notice the way my hands shook. That ticket wasn't just a cheap gesture, it was proof I'd never be enough. Tracy got a laptop, a future, a spotlight. I got a scratch-off, a shrug, a reminder to stay in my place. But I didn't cry, not then. I'd learned long ago that tears didn't change anything. Instead, I held onto that ticket not because I thought it'd win, but because it was mine, one of the few things they'd ever given me. Looking back, I used to think, if I tried harder, got better grades, stayed quieter, caused less trouble, they'd see me. I'd stay up late helping with dishes, folding laundry, anything to earn a glance. But it never worked. My mother would say, Tracy's got a big showcase this weekend, so we're all pitching in for her. My father would nod, adding, You're sensible, Melanie. You don't need the fuss. Sensible. That's what they called me, like it was a compliment, but it just meant invisible. Bethany was the only one who got it. We'd sit on her front porch sharing a soda, and she'd rant about how unfair it was. They treat you like a guest in your own house, she'd say, her eyes flashing. One day, you're gonna show them. I'd laugh it off, but her words planted a seed. I didn't know how, but I wanted to prove I was more than the kid they forgot. By the time I finished high school, I was done hoping. I'd spent 18 years chasing a love that wasn't there. The lottery ticket in my pocket felt heavier than it should, not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. I didn't know then that it'd change my life, not just my bank account, but the way I saw myself. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house under that roof, where every corner reminded me I'd never measure up. So I packed what little I owned, some faded clothes, a cracked phone, a notebook filled with half-written stories. I stuffed them into a duffel bag, left a note on the kitchen counter. I'm moving out. Don't worry, and walked away from that life in Charlotte without looking back. I found a studio apartment downtown, a cramped box with peeling paint and a window that rattled when trucks passed by. The rent ate half my paycheck, but it was mine. No one told me to be sensible. No one compared me to Tracy. No one expected me to fade into the background. I got a job waiting tables at a diner off Tryon Street, slinging burgers and coffee for tips that barely covered groceries. College was part-time, a few classes at the community college when I could afford it. My parents didn't offer to help with tuition. Tracy's design degree was their priority, and they'd already bought her a house in the suburbs, a cute bungalow with a picket fence. I didn't ask for their money. I'd learned long ago that asking got me nowhere. Life was hard, but it was honest. I'd come home after a double shift, feet aching, hands smelling of grease, and collapse onto a thrift store mattress. The apartment was quiet, just the hum of a cheap fan and the distant wail of sirens. For the first time, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I hadn't known I was carrying. My family didn't call, didn't text. The group chat, where I was still technically included, was all about Tracy, photos of her new house, her latest design project. My mother's gushing captions, like "so proud of our star." I'd scroll past, my thumb hovering, then lock my phone. Bethany was the only one who checked in, dropping by with a pizza or dragging me to a late-night coffee shop. "You're better off without them," she'd say, her eyes fierce. I wanted to believe her, but sometimes in the quiet I wondered if I'd ever stop feeling like the kid they forgot. That lottery ticket, the one my mother had tossed me like a pity prize, stayed in a drawer by my bed, buried under loose change and a stack of unpaid bills. I didn't scratch it, didn't even look at it. To me, it was a symbol of their indifference, not a chance at anything real. Every few weeks, I'd open the drawer, see its crumpled edge, and shut it again. It wasn't about the money. I didn't believe in luck. It was about what they thought I was worth, a $5 gamble, nothing more. Months turned into a year, then 2. I was 20 now, juggling diner shifts and college assignments, scraping by on instant noodles and stubborn pride. One Friday night, after a grueling 10-hour shift, I came home to a flickering light bulb and a final notice on my electric bill. I sank onto the floor, exhausted, staring at that drawer. Something nudged me, not hope, but defiance. I was tired of carrying their dismissal, tired of letting that ticket define me. I grabbed at my hand steady and sat at the wobbly kitchen table. My phone was open to the North Carolina lottery website, the numbers glowing on the screen. I scratched the silver coating, not expecting anything, just wanting to be done with it. The first number was 12, then 25, 38, 47, 53, 64. My breath caught, but I shook my head, certain I'd misread. I checked again, whispering each number, my heart thumping so loud I could barely think. They matched. Every single one. The website flashed a message. "Congratulations, you've won the jackpot, $68 million. I dropped the ticket, my hands trembling, and stared at it like it might vanish. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. I'd spent my life being overlooked, and now this. I sat there silent, the room spinning until the weight of it hit me. I'd won. Not just money, but a chance to rewrite everything. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced, questions piling up. What now? Who could I tell? My family would have been the last people I'd call. They'd never asked how I was, never cared if I was scraping by. If they knew, they'd come crawling, hands out, like I owed them. Bethany was the only one I considered, but even with her, I hesitated. This was too big, too fragile. By morning, I'd made a decision. I'd keep it secret, at least until I knew what to do. I opened my laptop, searched what to do if you win the lottery, and found a financial advice site. The first tip was clear: don't tell anyone. Hire a financial advisor you trust. I spent days researching, reading reviews, checking credentials. I settled on Sharon Wheeler, a financial advisor with 30 years of experience, based in a sleek office tower in Uptown Charlotte. I was nervous, my palms sweaty as I booked the appointment, but something about her profile, calm, no nonsense, felt right. The day of the meeting, I wore my best dress, a simple black one I'd bought on clearance, and arrived 20 minutes early. Sharon's office smelled of coffee and leather, with soft jazz playing in the background. She greeted me with a firm handshake, her gray eyes sharp but kind. "Melanie," she said, sitting across from me, "this is a life changer, but it's not a fairy tale. Let's make it work for you." For 3 hours, we mapped out a plan. I wouldn't claim the prize under my name, and LLC would keep my identity private. Sharon brought in a tax attorney and an investment specialist, a team that moved like they'd done this 100 times. They explained taxes, fees, the works. After everything, I'd get $42 million wired to a secure account under the LLC. I signed the paperwork, my hand steady, but my heart racing. A week later, the money landed, a number so big it didn't feel real. I stared at the bank statement on Sharon's computer, my old life of diner tips and overdue bills fading like a bad dream. I started small. I paid off my student loans, cleared my credit card debt, and moved out of that dingy studio into a modest townhouse in a quiet Charlotte neighborhood. It had hardwood floors, a tiny backyard, and windows that let in the morning sun. I bought a used Honda Civic, reliable but low-key, nothing flashy. Sharon pushed me to think bigger, not mansions or sports cars, but investments, a future. I enrolled in a graphic novel course, something I'd always wanted to try, but never had the time or money for. It felt strange having choices, not just scraping by. Through it all, I stayed quiet. I didn't tell Bethany, not yet. I didn't post on social media, didn't call my family. The group chat was still active, filled with Tracy's updates, her new design clients, her house renovations, my mother's endless praise. I'd see their messages and feel a pang, not of anger, but of distance. They didn't know I'd left that old Melanie behind, the one who waited for their approval. That lottery ticket, once a symbol of their neglect, had become something else, a key to a life I'd build on my own terms. I kept my job at the diner for a few weeks, not because I needed the tips, but because I wasn't ready to let go of the old Melanie, the one who'd fought for every dollar. The regulars noticed a change, though. "You're smiling more," one guy said, sliding his empty coffee cup across the counter. I shrugged, but he was right. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of my family's indifference. I quit the diner a month later, leaving a thank you note and $100 tip for the cook, who'd always saved me a slice of pie. It felt like closing a chapter 1 written in grease stains and late-night shifts. With Sharon's advice, I enrolled in a graphic novel course at a local art institute. I'd always loved stories, writing them in high school, sketching characters in the margins of my notebooks, but my parents had called it a waste of time, not like Tracy's real design talent. Now I had the freedom to try. The classes were small, filled with people who talked about panels and inking like it was their whole world. I'd sit in the back sketching, losing myself in worlds I created. It was the first time I felt like I was building something for me, not to prove a point to anyone else. I stayed off social media, kept my life private. My townhouse was registered under the LLC Sharon set up my car. A used Honda Civic didn't scream money. I didn't tell anyone about the win, not even Bethany. She'd been my rock, the one who'd seen me through the worst. But this secret felt too big, like it could change even the best things. We still hung out, grabbing coffee or watching bad movies at her place. "You seem different," she said one night, sprawled on her couch with a bowl of popcorn. "Like you're not stressed all the time." I laughed it off, said the diner was just slow, but her words made me nervous. I wasn't ready for questions, not yet. My family was another story. The group chat, where I was still a ghost, kept buzzing with Tracy's updates. Photos of her renovated bungalow, her latest graphic design gig. My mother's captions, like Tracy's "killing it," filled the screen. I'd glance at them, feel a dull ache, then put my phone away. They didn't call, didn't ask how I was. Once I texted a simple, "Hey, how's everyone?" No one replied, not even with an emoji. It stung, but it wasn't new. I'd stopped expecting them to care years ago. Sharon became more than an advisor. She was a mentor, someone who saw potential in me beyond the money. We met monthly, reviewing investments, stocks, bonds, a small stake in a local startup. "You're not just rich," she'd say, her voice firm. "You're building a legacy." I started to believe her. I bought a few nice things, a leather journal, a decent laptop for my graphic novel work. I planted lavender in my backyard, a nod to the dreams I'd buried as a kid. Every morning, I'd sit on the porch with coffee, watching the sunrise, and feel a peace I'd never known in that old house with my parents. But secrets like mine don't stay buried. It started with Bethany, of all people. She'd come over to my townhouse one Saturday, her eyes wide as she took in the hardwood floors and the view of the oak-lined street. "Mel, this place is gorgeous," she said, running her hand over the kitchen counter. "How are you affording this on a diner paycheck?" I mumbled something about savings and a side gig, but she didn't push. I thought that was the end of it. A week later, she was at a bar with some coworkers chatting about me, nothing malicious, just proud. "Melanie's got this amazing new place," she said, according to a friend who overheard. "She's doing better than any of us." That friend told another, and soon whispers were floating around Charlotte's small world circles. I didn't notice at first. I was too busy with my graphic novel course, sketching a story about a girl who rises from nothing. But then my phone started buzzing. A text from an old high school acquaintance. "Heard you're living large now, Mel. What's the deal?" I ignored it, my stomach twisting. Then came an email from a distant cousin asking if I was sitting on some cash. I deleted it, but the unease grew. The final straw was a message in the family group chat, the first in months, that wasn't about Tracy. It was from my mother, "Melanie, we heard you moved to a nice place. Why didn't you tell us?" No warmth. Just curiosity, like she was sniffing out a lead. I stared at that message, my coffee going cold. Tracy chimed in an hour later. "Yeah, Mel, what's up? Spill the tea." Her tone was playful, but I knew better. My father didn't say anything as usual, but his silence felt heavier than ever. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The idea of them knowing, guessing, even made my skin crawl. For years, they'd ignored me, left me to scrape by while Tracy got everything. Now, because of a rumor, they were circling like vultures. I locked my phone, my hands shaking, and called Sharon. Rumors spread fast. Sharon said, her voice calm but serious. You need to tighten things up. She suggested re-registering my assets under a new LLC layer, changing my mailbox to a P.O. box, and avoiding flashy purchases. I followed her advice, but the damage was done. 2 days later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice syrupy through the speaker. Sweetheart, I just want to catch up. It's been so long. I didn't call back. Tracy texted next, casual, like we were buddies. Hey, saw you're doing well. Wanna grab lunch? I left it on red. Bethany came over that weekend, apologetic. I didn't mean to start anything, she said, her face flushed. I was just bragging about you. I hugged her, told her it wasn't her fault, but inside I was reeling. The life I'd built, quiet, mine was slipping. My family's sudden interest wasn't about love, it was about what they thought they could get. I'd seen it before in the way they'd fawned over Tracy's every win, expecting her to reflect their glory. Now they saw me as a ticket, not a daughter or a sister. That night, I sat in my townhouse, the lavender scent from the backyard drifting through the open window. I opened my laptop, stared at the graphic novel I'd been working on. The main character, a girl with no name, was starting to take shape, strong, unbroken, free. I wanted to be her, but my family's messages kept buzzing in my mind like flies I couldn't swat away. I didn't know what they'd do next, but I knew one thing: I wasn't the Melanie they'd ignored anymore. Whatever they wanted, they'd have to face the woman I'd become. A week later, my mother called again, her voice bright through the voicemail. We're having dinner this Sunday, Melanie. Just the family. We'd love to see you. I stared at the phone, my thumb hovering over delete. Part of me wanted to stay away to keep the peace I'd built in my quiet Charlotte townhouse. But another part, the part that remembered every forgotten birthday, every cheap gift, wanted answers. Why now? What did they really want? I texted back, short and simple. I'll be there. I wasn't sure why I agreed, but I needed to face them to see if they'd changed or if I'd just been fooling myself all along. Sunday evening, I drove to the old house in Charlotte, the one with the white siding and the creaky porch swing. It looked the same neatly trimmed lawn, same faded curtains in the windows, but it felt smaller, like a memory I'd outgrown. I wore a plain sweater and jeans, nothing flashy, my used Honda Civic parked out front. My mother opened the door, her smile wide but brittle, and pulled me into a hug that lasted a second too long. You look good, she said, her eyes scanning me like she was searching for clues. My father gave a curt nod, his face half hidden behind a newspaper. Tracy was already at the table, her hair pulled back, her smile practiced. Hey, Mel, she said, like we'd just seen each other yesterday. Dinner was a performance. My mother served roasted chicken and mashed potatoes, the kind of meal she'd make for special occasions, but the air was thick with unspoken expectations. Tracy dominated the conversation, talking about her graphic design gigs, her plans to take things to the next level. My mother nodded along, her eyes gleaming with pride, while my father grunted in agreement. I sat quietly, picking at my food, counting the minutes until the act was over. They didn't ask about my life. Not my job, my classes, nothing. It was like I was a guest, not a daughter, just there to fill a seat. As dessert hit the table, a store-bought pie cut unevenly, my mother cleared her throat, her fork tapping the plate. Melanie, she began, her voice syrupy, we've been talking as a family. I set my glass down, my pulse quickening. Here it was, the reason they'd dragged me back. Tracy's got a big opportunity. She went on, glancing at my sister. She's planning to open her own graphic design studio, a real business. It's a dream come true, but it's expensive, $500,000 to get it off the ground. I stayed silent, my eyes flicking to Tracy. She leaned forward, her smile tight. "It's a sure thing, Mel," she said. "I've got clients lined up, but the startup costs are killer. We thought since you're doing so well." She trailed off, but the implication hung heavy. My father finally looked up, his gaze steady, like he'd already decided I'd say yes. My mother chimed in, her tone coaxing. "You've got that nice place now, Melanie. We figured you could help out just a little. Family helps family, right?" I leaned back in my chair, my hands steady, but my chest tight. For a moment I was 7 again, clutching a faded backpack while Tracy got her drawing tablet. I was 9, eating cupcakes alone while Tracy's party roared. I was 18, holding a $5 lottery ticket while they gave Tracy a house. The memories flooded back sharp and raw, but this time, I wasn't that girl anymore. I looked at them, my mother's expectant smile, Tracy's calculated charm, my father's silent pressure, and felt something shift. Not anger, but clarity. Family. I said, my voice calm but firm, repeating the word like it was a question. Where was family when I was working double shifts to pay for college? When I lived off instant noodles because no one offered to help? My mother's smile faltered, but I kept going. Where were you when I got that lottery ticket, the one you thought was a joke? You gave Tracy a house, a future, everything. Me, you gave me a shrug and told me to be sensible. The room went quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your skin. Tracy shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing. "That's not fair," she said, her voice sharp. "We all had our struggles. You don't get to rewrite history because you're doing okay now." My father nodded, his jaw tight, but my mother reached out, her hand hovering over mine. "Melanie, we did our best," she said, her voice cracking. "We're asking for help now because we're family. Don't turn your back on us." I pulled my hand away, my gaze steady. "I'm not turning my back," I said. "I'm just done pretending we're something we're not. You didn't see me then, and you don't see me now. You see money." I turned to Tracy, my voice even. "You want your studio, work for it like I did. No one's stopping you." I stood, grabbing my purse, my heart pounding, but my steps sure. "I used to want your approval," I said, looking at them one last time. "I used to think if I tried hard enough you'd love me, but I don't need that anymore." My mother gasped, her hand at her throat, but Tracy just stared, her face a mix of shock and anger. My father looked away, his newspaper forgotten. I walked to the door, the creak of the floorboards loud in the silence. Before I left, I turned back, my voice softer but clear. "I'm helping someone who actually saw me," I said. "Bethany's opening a print shop, and I'm backing her. That's what family does, shows up when it matters." I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face. The porch swing swayed gently, a ghost of the past, but I didn't look back. I got into my car, the engine humming as I pulled away from the house that had never been home. My hands gripped the wheel, not from fear, but from a strange relief. I'd said what I'd carried for years, and it felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. They wanted $500,000, but what they got was a truth they couldn't ignore. Driving back to my townhouse, I thought about Bethany. She'd been there through every low, bringing pizza when I was broke, listening when I felt invisible. She didn't know about the lottery yet, but I'd tell her soon, not just because I trusted her, but because she'd earned it. I'd help her open that print shop, not to prove a point to my family, but because it was right. They'd called me sensible, but they didn't know what I'd built, a life where I chose who mattered where. I wasn't defined by their neglect. When I got home, I sank onto my couch, the lavender scent from the backyard drifting through the window. My phone buzzed, another text from my mother, Melanie. "How could you say those things?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. For the first time, I wasn't running from their expectations or chasing their love. I was free, not because of the $68 million, but because I'd finally seen my own worth, and that was something they'd never take away. I told Bethany about the lottery the next week, sitting in her cramped apartment over takeout tacos. Her eyes widened, her fork frozen midair. $68 million, she gasped, then laughed, pulling me into a hug. Mel, you're insane for keeping this quiet. I explained everything, the ticket Sharon, the LLC, and my plan to help her open a print shop. Bethany had been there when I had nothing, sharing her last dollar for coffee when I couldn't afford it. Now I could give her the chance she'd never had. You don't have to, she said, her voice soft, but I shook my head. Your family, I told her, meaning every word. We spent hours sketching out ideas for her shop, a small space downtown where she'd print art for local creators. By spring, I'd quietly funded it $200,000, no strings attached. Watching her sign the lease, her hands shaking with excitement, felt better than any win I'd ever imagined. My own life took shape too. My graphic novel course turned into a passion I hadn't expected. I poured myself into a story about a girl who builds a world from ashes, her strength drawn from scars no one else sees. My instructor saw potential, connected me with a small press in Raleigh. 6 months later, my first graphic novel hit local bookstores. Its cover, a girl standing under a burning sky staring back at me from shop windows. I didn't tell my family. Their approval, once the only thing I'd craved, didn't matter anymore. I was writing for myself, for the readers who'd find something in my pages, not for a house that never saw me. Sharon helped me keep my wealth grounded. We met regularly, not just for investments, real estate, a few tech startups, but for talks about balance, about not letting money define me. You're not the lottery, Melanie, she'd say, her gray eyes steady. You're the choices you make. I took her advice, kept my life simple. My townhouse, my Honda Civic, a few trips to quiet places like Asheville's mountains or Wilmington's beaches. I started painting 2 small canvases of landscapes I'd seen in my travels, hung on my walls next to the lavender I'd planted. Every piece was a reminder I was building a life, not escaping one. My family didn't disappear, though I wished they would. My mother's texts kept coming, softer now, laced with guilt. We miss you, Melanie. Let's talk. Tracy sent an occasional message, less demanding, more careful. Saw your book in a store. Didn't know you did that. I didn't respond, but I didn't block them either. I wanted to see how far they'd go, how long it'd take for them to realize I wasn't coming back to their script. My father sent one email, short and stiff. Your mother's upset. Call her. I archived it untouched. But then, a month after the dinner, a letter arrived, handwritten in my mother's careful script. We made mistakes, it read. I see that now. You're still our daughter. I folded it, tucked it into a drawer with old receipts. It wasn't an apology I trusted, not after years of being invisible. Tracy surprised me most. I heard through a mutual friend she'd started freelancing more, taking on smaller clients to fund her own studio. She didn't ask me for money again, didn't mention the $500,000 they'd wanted. Part of me wondered if my words at that dinner had sunk in, if she was finally stepping out of the spotlight my parents had built for her. I didn't reach out. I wasn't ready to forgive, not when the scars of their neglect still lingered, faint but real. I kept my distance, meeting my family only at holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, where I'd show up for an hour exchange, polite words, and leave before the old patterns could creep back. I'd smile at my mother's cautious hugs, nod at my father's gruff hellos, trade small talk with Tracy about her work. But I didn't stay long. My real life was elsewhere, in the pages I drew, the mornings I spent sipping coffee on my porch, the evenings laughing with Bethany at her new shop. She'd named it Ink Haven, a nod to the art we both loved. Watching her hang the sign, her face glowing with pride, I felt a warmth I'd never known in that old Charlotte house. One crisp fall day, I drove to a comic convention in Durham, my graphic novel featured in the indie artist section. The convention hall buzzed with people, their voices blending with the hum of excitement. I stood at my booth, my book stacked neatly beside me, watching strangers flip through its pages. A teenage girl, maybe 16, lingered longer than most. This story, she said, clutching a copy. It's like you get what it's like to feel unseen. I smiled, my chest tight with quiet joy. I do, I said simply, signing her book. No one took photos, No one clapped. But that moment, her words, her eyes meant more than any praise my family could have offered. After the convention, I stopped at a cafe nearby, my leather journal open on the table. I sketched a new character, a woman who'd learned to stand tall without needing anyone's light, but her own. My phone sat silent. No texts from my mother or Tracy, and I was okay with that. I'd spent years chasing their love, believing I was less because they gave me less. But now, with $68 million and a life I'd built from scratch, I knew the truth. My worth wasn't tied to their approval. It was in the stories I told the people I lifted up, the peace I'd found. My family had given me a $5 lottery ticket thinking it was nothing. But that ticket and the choices I made after showed me who I was, a woman who didn't need their validation to shine. Tracy might keep designing, my mother might keep writing letters, my father might keep his silence, but I was done waiting for them to see me. I saw myself, and that was enough. Months later, I took a trip to Savannah, staying in a small inn by the river. I walked cobblestone streets, watched fireflies dance at dusk, and wrote new stories in my journal. My life wasn't loud or flashy, but it was full of mornings, painting afternoons, helping Bethany at her shop evenings, dreaming up worlds no one could take away. I'd learned to set boundaries, to choose who